all our viewers, wherever you are in India, have a safe Diwali and have a prosperous one, and may God bless you. Viewers, we're talking about another battle bonanza, a battle royale, the Diwali of Diwalis as far as elections is concerned. The second biggest Indian state with the second highest number of parliamentarians, and also the financial capital of India nestled right along its coast. Viewers, we are talking about Maharashtra, the prestige battle. The stage is set in Maharashtra. All the nominations have been filed. The voters know who they will be voting for in a few weeks. The two Maha-alliances, the Mahayuti and the Maha-Vikas Aghadi, have hit the ground and are vying to outpace each other to the finish line. If you go purely by the poll data, the Congress party-led Maha-Vikas Aghadi seems to have an advantage, an edge over the BJP-led Mahayuti, even though, viewers, in the just concluded Lok Sabha elections, the vote share difference between the Mahayuti led by the BJP and the Maha-Vikas Aghadi led by the Congress was wafer thin. There was hardly anything to choose between them. But that didn't mean that one on its day, on that particular day, was not actually leading in the Vidhan Sabha. And I'll give you a little bit of a breakup. If you purely look at it as a numbers contest, in June 2024, the MVA won 30 of the 48 Lok Sabha seats that were up for grabs, while the Mahayuti won just 17 of them. And that is also a reason, viewers, why the NDA could not reach, or the BJP could not reach the halfway mark in the Lok Sabha. The NDA also underperformed. The MVA in Maharashtra, 9 out of 15 seats where the victory margin was 5% or less. As I told you, it was a close call, but the MVA did very well in those close calls. The Lok Sabha 2024 result, when you project it onto the assembly map, then you see, viewers, that the MVA is leading. You can see on your screens in 153 seats. The Mahayuti led on 126 seats. So, because the halfway mark is 145 out of 288 seats, it's quite clear that the MVA, in its present composition, would have formed the government with a degree of comfort. About 46% also of the Dalits backed the MVA in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. All of this, of course, viewers, is post-poll data that was collected by CSDS. 55% of the tribal voters also backed the MVA, while 35% backed the Mahayuti. So, the two important chunks, the SC vote, the ST vote, these, viewers, drifted away from the NDA or the Mahayuti. 72% of Muslims consolidated behind the MVA in with the national trend. That was the national trend across India, and it had. So, in a sense, viewers, in a large number of seats, the MVA starts with an advantage. The BJP has lost 3% of the SC vote to NCP and Congress over 2014 and 2019. So, it's a trend which only got exacerbated in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Of course, I'm talking about the 2014 and the 2019 assembly polls, and we'll just have to see, viewers, if this trend continues. The BJP will hope that it doesn't, but if it does, there's going to be a bit of a problem. But sometimes numbers don't matter as much as perception. It is here that the Mahayuti, at this moment in time, the Mahayuti or the NDA might steal an advantage over the MVA. And why are we saying this? Will the perception of the Mahayuti being on a bit of an upswing because of the BJP's changed circumstances after Haryana and Jammu have some sort of a effect on the cadre. Well, Haryana and Jammu state poll results cements the BJP's upper hand over the Congress in direct fights also. And this means that in the 100 or so contests where the Congress is going to be up against the BJP, it might be the Congress that emerges more battered and bruised. Provided, of course, the vote transfer takes place, that is the Ajit Pawar faction of the NCP and the Shinde Sena, its vote transfers to the BJP en bloc. That remains to be seen, but the alchemy is in place. BJP has made 3 payouts under a vital scheme to gain favor of women voters who play a major role. And this, at the end of the day, might be, as many people think, the game changer. RSS BJP perception of difference has dissipated post the Haryana and Jammu polls. So the BJP comes in more cohesive with the Sangh engine, the very important vote management engine, firing on all cylinders. Traction for batenge to katenge narrative may make it difficult for the MVA, the Maha Vikas Aghadi led by the Congress, to split the BJP traditional votes. Remember, in the 2024 Lok Sabha election, there was a great fear that the BJP wants to secure 400 seats, change the constitution and get rid of quotas. That, viewers, that one plank that the India Alliance was really pushing is now not visible. There's also squabbling over seat allocation in the Maha Vikas Aghadi, the Congress-led MVA, and it has raised apprehension of instability among voters. What will happen if they come to power? There's also muted anti-incumbency. Or let me just say, anti-incumbency, no one really has an advantage here, as the Mahayuti is not a full-term sarkar, not a full-term government. Remember, viewers, that for about a year and a half to 2 years, the MVA was also in power. There's a mega infra push in Maharashtra, which has deprived the MVA of a plank to hurt the Mahayuti. That really is the common consensus. But let's ask some of the experts, let's ask some of the stakeholders where they are putting their money. How are they dissecting this anticipated battle, which will be, let me tell you, viewers, transformative. Because if the NDA were to lose Maharashtra, it would A, be out of power in all major metros in India. It would not be the dominant government in any major metro. Plus, obviously, it will change dynamics within the NDA also. Because once again, doubts over the efficacy of the NDA's message will come into question. But I'm not going to hog this space. Let's open this up. Neerja Chaudhary, senior journalist, has written a book on how prime ministers decide, bestseller, is there with us. Guru Prakash Paswan, national spokesperson of the BJP. Rahul Verma, senior fellow of the CPR, is here with us. Clyde Crasto, spokesperson of the NCP Sharad Pawar faction, representing the MVA tonight. So let me first bring in Clyde Crasto. Mr. Crasto, no doubt the election pivots on 2 or 3 things. Number 1, perception. Number 2, most importantly, who you pick as a candidate. And both sides, let me be very honest, have had their wrinkles, let's put it that way, in this seat allocation game. And thirdly, the person who is going to pivot, around which, the party around which, or the person around which the alliances are going to pivot. Now, how do you see, therefore, taking all these 3 into account, Mr. Crasto, the chances of the MVA?
I'll tell you, Rahul, the MVA is on a very strong footing. And when I say that, that doesn't make us complacent, nor does it make it overconfident. The fact of the matter is that what you just laid out in front of us regarding the Lok Sabha election and the voting percentage and how people voted. My point here is very simple, that the people of Maharashtra have realized what the Mahayuti is all about. I'll tell you what simple thing, very common issue that comes up is that every time the people from the Mahayuti, mainly the Bharatiya Janata Party, kept accusing people from the NCP, that is my party, or the Shiv Sena or the Congress, of corruption. constantly. You had a leader here, you still have that leader here, Mr. Kirit Somaya, who would wake up in the morning and accuse people of corruption. He'll say that I'll bring a truckload of photocopies of their corruption and everything. But what happens then? All these people, when they join the Bharatiya Janata Party, they are washed clean. And I will give you a simple example of Mr. Ajit Pawar. 4 days before Mr. Ajit Pawar joined hands with the Bharatiya Janata Party, our Honorable Prime Minister in a rally in Bhopal accused him of 70,000 crore corruption for the irrigation scam in Maharashtra. The Bharatiya Janata Party went to town screaming hoarse that Ajit Pawar is corrupt. We were defending him. I've been on your show defending Mr. Ajit Pawar on the so-called irrigation scam. But now you take him on and then he's clean again. So the people of Maharashtra have realized that the Bharatiya Janata Party, to bring people from the other side, just simply accuse, and if they are corrupt, why have corrupt people in their party? And I can give you many names. So these are the things that the people are actually upset of. And the most important thing is the people of Maharashtra are upset by the betrayal. How the original NCP, that is my party, now led by Mr. Sharad Pawar Sahab, that party was broken. Then how the Shiv Sena led by Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray was broken. People of Maharashtra cannot take betrayal. And that's what they proved in the Lok Sabha elections. You can see we won 30, actually 31, one person is part of our Mahavikas Aghadi. And they were decimated. So people will not accept it. At the end of the day, people have realized that the Mahavikas Aghadi is here to serve them. They're going to make sure that there's prosperity for the people of Maharashtra. Other example I can give you, as soon as this Shinde government came into functioning, they took all the big ticket projects away from Maharashtra. Now somebody asked me this question in an interview. I said, they must have checked the feasibility of Gujarat being better than Maharashtra. Let me tell you something. 3 big ticket projects I can talk about. Tata Airbus, Foxconn and Bulk Drug Park. I mean, these people, did they not do their homework before? I'm sure they did their homework. The feasibility of how good Maharashtra is. But just after they allotted it to Maharashtra, then they realized the feasibility is better in Gujarat? No. People realize that, you are bringing here and taking it to Gujarat. And let me tell you, Gujarat is also part of my country. And I'm happy that they're getting it. But why take it away from Maharashtra and give it to Gujarat? You could have gone to Gujarat first. No problem about that. But why is it that after this government came into functioning, that all the big ticket projects, Vedanta, Foxconn, Tata Airbus, Bulk Drug Park, all are going back to Gujarat? So I think people somewhere have realized that this Mahayuti government is only working for their selfish interest. Okay. And last example I want to give you, now there's big talk about Ladki Bahin Yojana. Fair enough, they are giving 1500 rupees. People are not completely happy about it. But there are leaders from the Mahayuti that are going to town and threatening the ladies, saying that you better vote us. If you do not vote us, we know how to take that money back from you. These kind of threats they are giving. So the people are upset. The ground reality is that people of Maharashtra have realized that Mahayuti led by Bharatiya Janata Party is just a hoax. They are not here for the people, and therefore they will vote for the Mahavikas Aghadi.
So these are important 4 points that have been raised by Mr. Krasto. And I want to bring in the BJP spokesperson, Mr. Paswan. Mr. Paswan, many people are saying that the politics of convenience is really your Achilles heel. I mean, Nawab Malik, your own party allies, including people within the BJP, including Shiv Sena Shinde's faction, have come out and said that he has links to Dawood Ibrahim. Yet one of your allies decides to give him a ticket from Mankur. And there are other examples that Mr. Clyde Krasto has, of course, cited, and many people have said that this corruption issue has now become a double-edged sword. People have realized that you have wielded it, but it applies to you also. There is also colored tactics that have been used to bid for power, splitting parties, etc., etc. Law of diminishing returns has kicked in, and you are not in favor. So even perceptorily, I might have, on the back of the Jammu and Haryana election, concluded that perception may be with you, even that is not in your favor, Mr. Paswan.
Rahul, a very warm good evening to you and all my fellow panelists. I was patiently listening to the points raised by the respected spokesperson of the NCP. But I think it surprises me, Rahul. And even in your initial set of observations, you said that the Bharatiya Janata Party was somewhere behind in the 2024 parliamentary election. But looking at the data, looking at the vote percentage specifically, the Bharatiya Janata Party had 43.03 percentage and the Congress-led alliance had 43.05 percentage. So there was hardly a difference of 0.02 percentage when it comes to vote share. Point number one. So just to say that the ground reality is something different, the NCP or Mahavikas Aghadi Vigadi is speaking on behalf of the ground reality, this is something which is preposterous, has no logic, has no connection to reality. Point number one. Point number two, my friend from the NCP was talking about the development projects. I think UPA and Mr. Sharad Pawar has been a very instrumental part of the UPA. When UPA was power in the center, what was the amount that was allocated to Maharashtra in 10 years, Rahul? It was hardly 1,90,000 crore. Since 2014, since NDA has assumed power at the center, the allocation to Maharashtra has gone up 10 times, more than 10 lakh crore when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to connectivity. Maharashtra has been the biggest beneficiary. Point number one. Point number two, my friend from the NCP is also talking about splitting parties and the law of diminishing returns. This is beyond my comprehension. Rahul, it is very important to have a sense of history. Mr. Sharad Pawar broke away the Congress party in Maharashtra. You have Madam Neerja Chaudhary in this panel who would very well agree with this fact that it was Mr. Sharad Pawar who engineered and orchestrated the first ever major split in the history of Maharashtrian politics by splitting the Congress party. So now Mr. Sharad Pawar party is speaking about splitting of political parties. I don't know from where does this moral authority comes from. Point number two, we have to understand, Rahul, that Maharashtra is land of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And in the land of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, when the entire Mahavikas Aghadi, they are leading a misinformation campaign about the impact on the constitution. I want to ask my friend from the NCP. It is the Mahayuti government in Maharashtra that has promised, and look at the visionary direction of this policy decision, that they will give constitutional status to the Maharashtra State SC Commission. No other state. No other state, Rahul, let me put this very clear on your show tonight. No other state, including the BJP state, has shown this audacity to give constitutional status to SC Commission in the state, which is a powerful message that has gone to the Dalit communities. Point number three. We'll look at the OBC increase in the creamy layer limit from 8 lakh to 15 lakhs. Who is going to benefit? I want to ask. Who is going to benefit? It is the marginalized section. It is the women who are going to benefit from the Ladki Bahin Yojana as well. Point number three, you speak about the allocation of tickets. Rahul, we have to understand that allocation of tickets, will the Bharatiya Janata Party decide who the NCP Ajit Pawar will
No, I'm talking about a very specific, I'm talking about your emphasis on corruption and the compromise that you have made with that. You haven't addressed that issue, which is the big one that Clyde Crasto raised. One second, on that point, let Mr. Crasto also make his other point. Yes, you want to make a quick point and you can respond to both, and then I want to open this up to Neerja Chaudhary and Rahul Verma.
I want to make a quick point, the gentleman was like giving like a big talks and all, fair enough, he spoke very well. But the point here is, I am very happy that today he called the Bharatiya Janata Party immoral, because if he thinks or if he says that we broke parties and we are immoral, which is not the truth, that means I'm happy. I mean, I commend his guts that he's called
so
the
what
Bharatiya
about
Janata
Tree? You're being accused of
Devendra Fadnavis.
Okay, so you're being accused of what about Tree?
So Devendra Fadnavis,
Mr. Paswan. They did it, so we can do it.
That's what. So,
right. No. Okay, so let him answer.
So Devendra Fadnavis, he's accusing Devendra Fadnavis of being immoral because Devendra Fadnavis went on record to say that I broke parties.
Okay, let him answer.
One more thing. I just want to ask a question. One question. My question is,
Sir, I did not speak.
Is Anand Kumar Hegde not the part of the BJP?
Okay.
This debate is such an encouraging
debate. Okay.
Let's have a very civil debate.
Okay, gentlemen, don't speak over each other. I understood. We can come back. No problems. Let's very quickly, Mr. Paswan, make your point. Yes. Yeah. Make your point. Respond.
Very simple point. Very simple point, Rahul, which I want to convey. I said that it is important to have a sense of history. Mr. Sharad Pawar is the Sargana when it comes to splitting political parties.
No, but that's what about Tree?
Fact.
They did it, so we can do it.
One point. Rahul, एक बात बोलने दीजिए ना. Rahul, one point.
Okay.
Rahul, I will not let him speak. Rahul, I did not speak when he was speaking.
Gentlemen, don't speak over each other.
Rahul, I will not speak when he was speaking.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Paswan. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The spokesperson from the splitter in chief is heckling when other people are speaking. This is not allowed. Rahul, point number two.
Yeah.
Rahul, point number two. Rahul, I have to speak, bhai.
Yes,
No,
go ahead.
Rahul, one last point, and I will end my submission.
Yeah.
I have to quote from Baba Saheb Ambedkar. He has written in his thesis, Thoughts on Linguistic States in 1955. Very simple point, which Baba Saheb Ambedkar has said, and my friend from the NCP might agree or disagree. Baba Saheb Ambedkar says, and I quote, that the Congress High Command did not value Maharashtrian leadership at all. In support of all this, he illustrated the example of selection of Chief Minister. He says further that the Congress party favored a Gujarati Morarji Desai over a Maharashtrian leader, and therefore Congress never cultivated Maharashtrian leadership within the politics of Maharashtra. It is the observation of Baba Saheb Ambedkar in Thoughts on Linguistics since 1955.
Right.
Now today, Mr. Sharad Pawar goes and sits in the same Congress party, in the lap of Congress party, who never
Okay, but that
actually
alliance has been
respected
around for
Maharashtrian
a...
leadership.
Okay,
I
now
want to
that-
ask him.
No, 1 second. That alliance now has been around for a long time.
30 seconds, please.
No. I just want to open this up now. Gentlemen,
That
please.
doesn't mean that we should not be discussing history.
No,
Rahul.
1 second.
30 seconds, my request to you, Rahul.
Okay, 30 seconds. Yes, sir. 30 seconds.
Just a request.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, the BJP spokesperson has not answered your question on corruption. So, should I gather that the Honorable Prime
I have
Minister, when he
answered your
accused
question, sir.
Ajit Pawar of
Bhrashtachar ke
corruption of
sargana.
70,000 crores and took him
Bhrashtachar
on-
ke sargana
Okay,
is asking
gentlemen,
on
gentlemen,
corruption.
gentlemen.
Bhrashtachar ke
Then you
sargana,
are-
Mr. Sharad
listen,
Pawar.
if you're going to talk in between, I
Okay,
can
please,
talk better than
please,
you.
please,
Bhrashtachar
please.
ke sargana is
Gentlemen, this is a high profile election.
the taste of your own blood.
No, 1 second now, gentlemen, please, please.
Give me
I know
30
this
seconds,
is,
Rahul.
I know this is a high-profile election, and both sides have a lot at
I need
stake.
my 30 seconds, Rahul.
On that, Mr. Crasto, quickly finish your point,
30
please.
seconds.
Just finish your point on the corruption issue.
Yeah, my
Yes.
point is very quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope I don't get interjected. My point is, when the Honorable Prime Minister calls Ajit Pawar corrupt and then takes him on, does
Fair
that
enough.
mean he's supporting corruption? Answer that
Answer
question.
that point directly.
Hassan Mushrif,
Mr.
Gagan
Paswan,
Bhujbal,
answer that.
Dhananjay Munde,
Okay,
all these people
he's
are
answering
accused
the
of
question
corruption.
now, Mr. Crasto.
Why
Listen.
you take going with that?
Okay.
Nawab,
Answer the
Nawab
question.
Malik was accused
Okay,
of
okay,
underworld-
Mr. Crasto, please don't let me.
Answer.
Bhrashtachar ke sargana, splitter in chief.
Okay.
Bhrashtachar ke sargana, splitter in chief. As far as the question of
the man
Ajit
is
Pawar is
frustrated, he's
concerned,
screaming.
the investigation
Okay,
is
now
still going on.
I'm stepping in now.
Desperado.
I'm not getting a clear answer. Lower everyone's faders, please. This is not fair. I'm not getting a clear answer. There is a lot of whataboutery. If they did it, we can do it, so and so forth. I don't know, viewers, if that really is the answer here. The answer should be that we draw a line because we stand for a particular cause and it is central to our identity. That I'm not getting. But nonetheless, viewers, it's not about us tonight. It's also about the voter and what they are going to look at. And Nirja Chaudhary, let me bring you in. There are issues, but do the issues cancel each other out? Now, you've just got a sample of that. You've heard both sides accuse each other of the same thing, certain degree of whataboutery on both sides. So, these issues cancel each other out. What really is going to be the voter's approach? What is he going to look out for?
Look, if you look at it as a debating points, and you say one argument cancels out the other. But that's not the way things happen. Certain issues have traction and certain issues do not have traction. Now, this thing of Morarji Desai, it's very interesting that Morarji Desai was favored over a Maharashtra leader. That's a story of decades ago. Today, India, 65% of India is under 35. They have a fading memory of Indira Gandhi. Forget Morarji Desai and when he became Prime Minister. So, what are the issues today? Broadly, if I were to put it, oversimplifying everything, I would say, on the one hand, yes, MBA has the advantage because it won 30 out of 48 seats, but but assembly elections are not like Lok Sabha elections. Let's be very clear, other issues kick in. And one side is sympathy for the MVA and anti-incumbency against Mahayuti, which includes, corruption and all the other things that naturally pile up in 5 years. And on the other side, the Mahayuti is, and the sympathy is for two reasons here, Rahul. If you'll give me 1 minute to say that. Sympathy is not only because of the split in the Shiv Sena and the NCP, which many people did not like in Maharashtra, but it is also sympathy for the leaders of the Shiv Sena and Sharad Pawar. And this showed up in the Lok Sabha election. Uddhav Thackeray, who they saw ran the state fairly well, reasonably well in the COVID times. And Sharad Pawar, this old man at 84, campaigning all over, probably the tallest figure in the MVA and probably in Maharashtra today, and probably his last election, but he's going all guns blazing. And there is a little bit of that sympathy. Now, I don't know whether that sympathy, which manifested itself during the Lok Sabha election, has spent itself out, has diluted, has weakened. We don't know. We will see. But on the other side is one game changer, which you keep hearing about, which is part of the social welfare SOPs and schemes that Eknath Shinde's government has put out. And we know Mukhyamantri Majha Ladki Bahen Yojana. And if you talk to people, money is coming to their hands, whether it's 4,500 rupees, whether it's 7,500 rupees, how much of a game changer, but it certainly will have an impact. Now, does it make up for the losses that the Mahayuti stands to suffer? That we will see, because there are women who said, will it continue after the elections? Is it only an election ploy? Will they have the money to continue? Those kind of voices are also being heard. So today, if one was to sum up the situation in Maharashtra, I would say it's not like the Lok Sabha elections, where it was a runaway success for MBA. It is much more of a takkar.
Much more of a takkar. Rahul Verma, how do you see the issues and how do you see the various alliances, now the two main alliances really, tackling them? Because there is the issue of corruption, no doubt about it. Many people have been, it's on all these so-called surveys, it does feature up there. There's also economic, a certain degree of economic woe that creeps in. And there is also this sort of conversation around reservations, etc. So how do you see these issues?
Thank you, Rahul. First, to start off with, you asked where will I put my money on? I will certainly not put my money anywhere, especially what happened after 2024 elections and Haryana results. I think one should be cautious where to put money on Indian elections. Second, I think the conversation which we just heard and what is happening in Maharashtra is a symptom of larger problem in Indian politics. Basically, we are talking about nothing in that sense. No party can take a moral high ground on any of the issue we are talking about, certainly not on corruption and certainly not on splitting parties. They should be rather worried about a state in serious decline. Think of Maharashtra being a state which was like financially and economically much ahead of many of the states 30 years back. And it's in decline in these 30 years. And both alliances or both parties have to take responsibility for this. Social identities are raising their heads. You are seeing the largest sort of like most dominant group mobilizing itself for reservation. And so in some ways, Maharashtra is in a backward mode. And I don't think they are talking about some of those things. Just to sort of like conclude on the conversation about, Lok Sabha election, seat share in one direction, vote share being closed. Actually, what happened in Maharashtra, if you divide the state into 6 regions, each region has a very specific dynamic. While the BJP-led alliance did really well, or at least led in terms of vote share in Thane, Konkan belt, in Mumbai region, the Congress led in Vidarbha, and the NCP Sharad Pawar faction did really well in Western Maharashtra and Marathwada. So the only way, if say NDA has to or Mahayuti has to flip this election, they have to first, BJP on its own, do really well in Vidarbha and have to give a tougher fight in Marathwada. Otherwise, this election is gone from their hands. And if the Mahavikas Aghadi wants to sort of like make sure that they come to par, they need to figure out the Mumbai, Thane, Konkan belt because there they sort of like lagged in terms of votes.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Viewers, are we really looking at a bit part election? 6 regions that will perhaps vote differently, and will we be seeing the most decentralized election where it's actually the candidate that brings in the vote across 288 seats? Not so much the party, not so much the ideology, but the candidate. Will it all come down really to candidate selection, to that other part which we don't get to encounter, the nitty-gritty back maneuvering part that will deliver a verdict for both the fronts. We don't know, viewers, but perhaps that might just be it. 6 elections region-wise and 288 verdicts. Is that really what we are looking at? I'll leave it at this, viewers. But coming up next is a riveting interview with Vikram Sampath. Viewers, what to make of Tipu Sultan? Is he the unifying nationalist he is made out to be in the countless TV portrayals of his storied life? Is he the relentless harrier of the British we have come to know through our history books? Does he deserve to be placed on a pedestal as he has been for much of independent India's recent history? The quest for the truth about Tipu has been joined by Vikram Sampath, who is famous for having written the most authoritative treatise on the life of another Indian icon, Veer Savarkar. In his 900-page rollicking and accessible biography of Tipu Sultan, full of anecdotes, Vikram Sampath takes us down a series of twisty paths in the search for the truth about Tipu. So what actually has he found? To talk a little bit more about the scholarship and Tipu Sultan, let's go straight across to Vikram Sampath. Mr. Sampath, thank you very much for speaking to me. It's a pleasure. This is yet another tome that you have assiduously written, 900 pages. Could you first of all just hold it up for our viewers so they get a sense of what this immense body of work, pun intended, is all about? There it is, viewers. That's on your screens. You can see it. It's almost a doorstop, actually. You can use it as a pillow if you want, but more importantly, it is your window to the life and times of Tipu Sultan. It is also your window to a great deal of facts that haven't been yet known about Tipu Sultan. And let me tell you, Vikram Sampath is the man to go to. Now, Vikram Sampath, first of all, let's start with the brass tacks, so to speak. When was this book written? What was the inspiration? How long did it take you? Clearly, this is not overnight. Clearly, this is not 3 months. Clearly, this is not 6 months either.
Thank you, Rahul. Such a pleasure always to talk to you. And I think in-depth conversations on matters of history, I've enjoyed always having them with you. This book, certainly, as you mentioned, it's not something that came up all of a sudden. The book has been in the making in my head for now close to perhaps 15 years. Quite ironically, my foray into literature and historiography was thanks to Tipu Sultan. There was a very famous serial those days on Doordarshan, if you remember, called The Sword of Tipu Sultan, where Sanjay Khan played the lead role. And that serial led to a lot of disturbances in different parts of the state that I come from, Karnataka, because in their attempt to glorify Tipu and his father Hayar Ali, who actually usurped the throne of Mysore from the Hindu rulers, the Wadeyars, the producers of the serial tried to show the royal family in an extremely poor light. The Maharaja was shown like an obese retard who was dancing with the court dancer. The Maharani, like one of those typical, vamps from an Ekta Kapoor serial, all the time conniving and conspiring. And there were lots of protests in different parts of Karnataka. I'm talking of the 1990s. And if you remember, even the studio caught fire, and I think Sanjay Khan's face got burnt and so on. And there were lots of murmurs in Kannada media here that it is the curse of the Wadeyar for the kind of portrayal that he had given to him. And so, as I was probably a boy of 12, 13 years of age who really hated history in the manner in which it was taught in schools. But these protests, these talks of all these curses and all of that, I don't know, it kindled something in me, and from there on began a completely self-motivated and a self-funded initiative to get on to the discovery of the truth about just that one king and queen who were misrepresented in the serial. And soon, over a course of 10 years, it expanded to the entire Wadeyar dynasty, who ruled for 600 long years, one of the longest reigning royal houses in India. And one section of the book was on the interregnum period, or the intermission, the interval between where a legitimate government is disposed and a usurpation occurs. And that was the 40-year interregnum from 1760 to 1799 by Hayar Ali and later his son Tipu. That was a small section of the book. Now I was still a babe in the woods. I was probably 26, 27 when this book came out. A couple of talks I was giving in Bangalore about Tipu Sultan and the interregnum era, and I was reading out letters that he wrote to his own officers where he's very clearly mentioning go to Calicut, destroy so many temples, destroy churches, kill infidels. I was just quoting it verbatim, and that led to a huge ruckus in the hall. Some people disrupted the event, one of them even, and the event had to be aborted. I was ushered backstage, and my poor father was sitting in the audience, and someone went and thrust a letter or pamphlet or something in his hand and said, you have only one son, and so if you want him to live long, please ask him to mind what he speaks. And a couple of weeks later, there was some article I wrote about the Divans of Mysore, in which there was a reference to Tipu, and that led to protests again. And right in the heart of Bangalore, in MG Road, I remember my effigy also being burnt by some of the protesters. Now, obviously, we at home were not prepared for something like this, and my parents, particularly my mother, was extremely hassled about this, and she extracted a promise from me that I'll never talk about Tipu Sultan in public. Of course, I kept my promise to her till the time she was alive. We unfortunately lost her in 2018, and since then this book has been re-germinating in my mind. And it took me around 4 years later to revisit all the sources that I was already familiar with about Mysore history, to revisit them, go deeper into that, and that's how this book came out. It's been a labor of love, something that's been brewing in my mind for long. I know I've broken my promise to my mother, but now that she's not around in flesh and blood, I can only hope and pray that from whichever heaven she is in, she will protect me against any kind of unintended harm or consequence that I might face after this book comes out.
Well, first of all, sorry about your loss, but fundamentally you're seen as an author who redeemed the image of Hindutva icon Veer Savarkar, and that was a masterful exposition over 2 volumes, and you rescued him from this sort of, if I can say, pejorative sort of narrative woven by the left to discredit his image, etc. Now you've turned your attention to an individual who the left has built up again in our minds. Do you worry that your scholarship on Tipu will be dismissed as an attempt at misrepresentation?
I mean, people can always say what they wish to say, but as you have also seen, Rahul, almost 200 pages of the book, of this very mammoth tome, is footnotes and references. So for every claim that I make, there is a backstory, there is a source, and I think that is a historian's biggest shield or protection. And in my case, irrespective of what the outcome or what the dismissals or the attacks that might come or might not come, they don't matter much to me anymore. I think as long as my conscience is clear, and my clear and only adherence to the craft of my profession of being a historian, as long as I adhere to that and illuminate the archive, that is what a historian needs to do. Over the last 4 years, while I revisited most of these sources, I made several trips to archives across India and also outside, whether it was in London, the British Library, the India Office Library there, Paris and other places, and there's copious amount of documentation around him, his various communications with people. And Tipu was a very, very prolific writer. Unlike his father, who was illiterate, he was very well read, and so he wrote copiously. So we get a lot of first person account in Persian. For a brief while I even tried to learn Persian myself so that I could read the original manuscripts. That ended in a bit of a disaster, so I rather use the help of a translator. So most of these are primary source materials in Persian, in Marathi, the Peshwa Daftar documents, which have a lot of correspondences between Pune and Mysore, which happened in those troubled years. And the 18th century, Rahul, is an extremely important one which we sometimes gloss over. It's a century of chaos. You had 2 major powers, so to say, having collapsed by then. One is of course the death of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj towards the end of the previous century, and the death of Aurangzeb. And with this, the centrifugal forces had dissipated in the Indian polity, and in its place came lots of principalities, all vying for independence, be it the Nizam in Hyderabad, the Nawab of Awadh, Bengal, the Marathas later under the Peshwas emerging as a main force. So it was a theatre of the of chaos, of the absurd, and in that you also have the European parts, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and of course the British and the French muddying the waters. So to zoom into this very important century, which I think holds a lot of lessons for us, because that was the century when India capitulated and we had the onset of British colonialism. So a lot of revisiting of this era is important, and that is what I've tried to do in this book, completely based on facts, keeping my own whatever predispositions or prejudices, if any, aside. And that is how I think objectively a historian needs to, as I said, illuminate the archive for a general public who may not be either interested or well versed in accessing sources in their original.
So now let's get into the substance of it. 300,000 words, and almost a third, just shade under third of the book is devoted to Tipu's father Hayar Ali. Now clearly this was a conscious choice on your part. Why did you spend so much time introducing us to Hayar Ali?
Yes, in fact, I wanted that as a separate volume, in fact, because it was just so. Haidar's is a fascinating story. As you've read, he was someone who, from rags to riches, literally building his, his career, his life, his empire brick by brick. His ancestors are supposed to have migrated from somewhere in the Afghanistan, Punjab and so on, and settled down later, first in northern Karnataka, where his father Fateh Muhammad was serving the Nawab of Sira. And the father dies prematurely and owes money to a debtor, and to actually recover the debt, the person puts Haidar and his elder brother Shahbaz into these kettle drums and has them beaten upon and so on. And in such a piteous situation, the Maharaja of Mysore takes pity on these fatherless boys and pays the ransom to release them. So from that situation, in 12 years, if you see the arch of his career, he ran with the hare, hunted with the hounds, a typical Machiavellian kind of politician, ruthless, only driven by this thirst for power and for climbing the ladders of power in Mysore. In 12 years, he manages to overthrow and usurp the throne of his own benefactor, the Maharaja of Mysore, and becomes the Sarvadhikari, or the supreme dictator of the kingdom. Now, this is a story in itself, which intertwined also with the politics of the time that I mentioned, the Carnatic wars that raged in South India, the wars of succession where Hyderabad, Arcot and all these kingdoms were using Europeans and other Indian powers in their internecine squabbles. And as a result of all of this, the only person who made the maximum hay while the sun shone was Hayar Ali. And so I think his story becomes a very important foil to that of Tipu Sultan. Once you see Haidar, and you actually, as a biographer of both father and son, I would probably rate the father much higher, because he was a man who actually strove so hard to build this kingdom, build his own kingdom, and he knew how to maintain that as well. So this was a very important feature of the father. The son got it all on a platter and eventually ended up losing it, thanks to only his foolhardiness, his lack of foresight, the sense of hubris, arrogance, and that whole intoxication that power and absolute power brings to a person.
So how do you attribute Tipu's, I suppose it's a zealotry, how do you contrast that to his father? So is it because Tipu found himself being raised by people who were perhaps extremely austere and were not fond of the sensual pleasures of life, were very pious? Is that, must have been something that made Tipu predisposed towards this sort of austere and extremely conservative point of view?
I think the seeds of bigotry and this kind of strict adherence to tenets of your own faith were laid or sown in his mind in his childhood because of this teacher and so on. And he was, as I said, a very prolific writer and a reader. So he read a lot. In fact, from his palace after his fall, the British, got thousands and thousands of books in several languages, largely Arabic and Persian. He was well versed in these languages. He would read a lot, but a lot of these books too from his library, while they are of other things, astronomy and physics and history and so many poetry and all of that, several books are about jihad, about what a mujahideen needs to do. In fact, one of his attendants, Abdul Shustri, he actually writes this book called Fathul Mujahideen, which details the detail of how a mujahideen should actually conduct a jihad. So I think somewhere when the father was away in battle and so on, the son seems to have absorbed a lot of this, the austerities of the faith. And immediately after coming to power in 1782, the first 5 years for him were a dream run. It was a dream that any ruler could have. He concluded the Second Anglo-Mysore War, which was midway through somewhere, and his father had died in the middle of the war. He conducted it superbly to his advantage with the Treaty of Mangalore, which actually was the last document where an Indian power had an upper hand over a European power. So that was a great success. He had managed to vanquish the Marathas during their subsequent attacks on Mysore, because Pune was in turmoil. Madhav Rao had died, and you had the whole Barbhais there after Narayan Rao's assassination and so on. So he managed to vanquish the Marathas. All the smaller rebellious Palegars, Coorg, Malabar, he managed to vanquish all of that. Internal sabotage, he managed to vanquish that. Attempts by the displaced royal family to dispossess him, that also he managed to subdue. So this huge sense of I can do nothing wrong, the hubris, the arrogance that came in, that is a story in itself. In fact, there are a couple of anecdotes where his followers and army men tell him not to proceed forward because they expect a cloud burst, and he pompously says, you think I cannot command the clouds to stop their thunder on me? I can do that. But then sadly for him, the clouds actually burst, and there was huge rain in which the entire army got stuck. But that apart, he had this highly bloated self-image. In fact, Colonel Mark Wilkes, who's a historian of Mysore history, he documents instances where Tipu even goes to the extent of being so blasphemous as to compare himself with the Holy Prophet, and in some cases even think that he is better than him. So when someone gets into this kind of megalomania and thinks that religion is that aid to come your way, I think downfall is also very, very imminent. To me, Tipu's story is like a classic Greek tragedy. Somebody who gets the power, the joys of sovereignty on a platter from his father who's worked so hard for him, and because of these kind of negative attributes, you actually squander it away bit by bit, and in the course of 17 years you dig up your own grave and you bring misery both for yourself as well as your future generations who lost power thereafter.
That's interesting, because you obviously paint Tipu as this individual who was quite obsessed with carrying out jihad, etc., who was quite given to a certain piety and committed excesses, and you have detailed them, which we will talk about. But somehow in the Indian imagination, it's Aurangzeb that figures as the real iconoclast, so to speak, when it came to Hinduism, Hindu temples, etc. But Tipu wasn't very far behind. How is it that the Tipu story sort of got extrained from the mainstream, and Aurangzeb became the linchpin of this?
Yeah, I think Tipu was the Aurangzeb of the South. I think numerous reasons why I think these aspects of Tipu did not come out, though I'm sure everybody knew about it. At least in Karnataka, people knew. The South doesn't feature so large in the larger narrative of Indian history. We're so Delhi-centric in our approach. So I think every little detail about Delhi, its rulers, all of that gets the larger, audience. The South, you cherry pick what you want. The other is the manner in which, of course, our history has been written post-independence, where all these uncomfortable truths, which are real facts of history, we labor under some false misapprehension that talking about these truths will somehow upset the social cohesion of India today, that communities today will feel upset if you mention these things, which are a fact of life. You can't wish away your past, you can't whitewash it or say these things never happened because you think it is uncomfortable. And ideally, the Muslims of Karnataka or the Muslims of India need not think of Tipu or Aurangzeb as their hero. He was as barbaric as anybody could be. So, if he was a villain for the Hindus and Christians of South India, he should be considered as much of a villain for the others too. Now, and I think popular media was employed in a wonderful manner to build this image of Tipu. You had, as I mentioned, the sword of Tipu Sultan. I think that was the main, window to most Indians today to understand this man, the hero worship of the man, that very, marchy tune of the title music. That is what comes to people's mind when they talk about Tipu Sultan. And the fact that I think he fought the British, that also kind of redeems him or somehow saves him from his horrendous social report card. Just because you fought against the British, that doesn't take away all the other negatives that your very stormy rule has had. Post independence, I mean, this is the common narrative even in popular media, whether it is cinema and so on. The British is always the bad guy, and the Indian who's the subaltern, so to say, the David and Goliath fight, where the Indian is fighting against the British. So anybody who does that is the hero. But truth be told, in the two wars that Tipu actually fought himself against the British, he lost both of them and lost them horribly. The 4 Anglo-Mysore wars that were fought, the first 2 were fought under his father Hayar, where Mysore scripted unprecedented victory. The first Anglo-Mysore war, in fact, Hayar goes to the very gates of Madras. The British could have been exterminated from India at that point. He makes them sign an extremely humiliating treaty, something that makes sends shockwaves back in London. The stock prices of the East India Company tumbles down and all of that. The court of directors are so livid with what the company has been doing. The second Anglo-Mysore war too, where Tipu of course played a very important role in both these wars as a deputy to his father. In fact, there is the Battle of Polilur during the course of the second Anglo-Mysore war, where he defeats this man called Colonel Bailey, which is painted actually at the Darya Daulat Palace of Srirangpatna. It's called the Lali Bailey Yuddha. So there it's like a propaganda art about how Bailey is shown as this very effeminate person sitting in a palanquin, twiddling his thumbs and so on, and these two are the macho men who are riding their elephant and horse and defeating him. Sir Hector Munro, who was the hero of the Battle of Plassey, Buxar, defeated the Mughal, the Nawab of Bengal, the Nawab of Awadh. He literally throws away all his guns and ammunition in the water tank in Kanchipuram and runs away to Madras to save his life. So that was the terror which Hyder could actually instill, in his opponents. And Tipu learnt those tricks of the war very well under his father. So that's why he managed to conclude the second Mysore war with a lot of positive gains to himself. The Treaty of Mangalore, as I mentioned earlier, in 1784. But after that, it was a downhill. So the 2 other wars he fought himself, the third Anglo-Mysore war with Lord Cornwallis as his opponent, he lost half his kingdom. He had to give war indemnity of about 3.5 crores, for which he also had to pledge away his 2 sons, Abdul Khalik and Muizuddin, as hostages to the British. And then of course the last Anglo-Mysore war against Richard Wellesley, who decided that let's take it to the kill and the finish, and the final Anglo-Mysore war, where he was killed in Srirangapatna on 4th May 1799. So even if we look at this heroism against the British narrative, actually Tipu was not somebody who won any war against them when he independently fought those. Under the shadow of the huge banyan tree that his father was, he certainly made a lot of gains. So I think a lot of story, the popular story, the folklore around Tipu has been couched in so much of grandiose narrative that the real Tipu really struggles to come out in front of our eyes.
Well, there's this very interesting exchange between Tipu and his mother, which is quite instructive and gives you an insight into how deep, into how sort of he was evolving as a person and a monarch. This is an interesting exchange.
Yes. In fact, this mother of his, Fatima or Fakrunnisa, she was variously called, she was a very, very authoritative woman. In fact, there's a very funny anecdote that Hyder, while he was this terror-inspiring, macho man that he was, not only in India but even outside, he was extremely scared of his wife. So he would go with a lot of trepidation to her chambers, and she would give him such a tongue lash, and he would come running away, and then he would have this drunken revelry with his friends where he says, I find it so much more easier to fight the British than face my wife's tongue. So she was this very controlling, authoritative woman, and she had her influence on her son too. Tipu was swayed by her all the time. In fact, including the choice of the girl he had to marry. Hyder had a choice, but the mother overruled that and brought a girl of her own choice, and finally, of course, Tipu ended up marrying both, but the mother kind of always prevailed. So the anecdote you're referring to is much after Hyder's death, when in the open court we have this very interesting man called Purnaya, who was the Diwan. He was a very close confidant of Hyder, but also continued under Tipu. A very astute, very able diplomat of sorts. Now, in the open court, Tipu makes an offer to him saying, you're such an intelligent person, why don't you join us and convert to Islam? Now, Purnaya, being the artful badger, somehow, hurriedly says, yes, Sahab, as you please, and so on, and he makes a hurried entry. The mother is actually sitting behind in the women's section behind the parda, and she's supposed to have come out and given her peace of mind to Tipu, saying, your father never did this kind of thing. If you embitter people and lose the confidence of your near and dear, then your ruin is not too far away, so you better mend your ways. So she gives him that advice, but obviously that advice fell on deaf ears, because that was basically the reason why he lost out so many of his confidants. This overt push for religious conversion and so on, and adherence to Islamic tenets, all of that led to him losing the confidence of so many people, particularly the Hindus. And after the loss in the Third Anglo-Mysore War particularly, his confidence in the Hindus, particularly the Brahmins, almost evaporated, and that is what led to his eventual downfall.
Well, thank you, Vikram. Sampath, as always, engaging, always effusive, and always so easy with the words. Thank you so much, and your book, really a testament to your scholarship as well as your ability to tell an interesting story in an interesting manner. So thank you very much. It's been lovely speaking to you once again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rahul.
एकता दिवस पर सभी देशवासियों को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। साथियों, इस बार का राष्ट्रीय एकता दिवस अद्भुत संयोग लेकर आया है। एक तरफ आज हम एकता का उत्सव मना रहे हैं, वहीं दूसरी तरफ दीपावली का भी पावन पर्व है। दीपावली दीपों के माध्यम से पूरे देश को जोड़ती है, पूरे देश को प्रकाशमय कर देती है। और अब तो दीपावली का पर्व भारत को दुनिया से भी जोड़ रहा है। अनेक देशों में इसे राष्ट्रीय उत्सव की तरह मनाया जा रहा है। मैं देश और दुनिया में बसे सभी भारतीयों को, भारत के शुभचिंतकों को दीपावली की अनेक अनेक शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। साथियों, इस बार का एकता दिवस एक और वजह से भी विशेष है। आज से सरदार पटेल का 150वां जन्म जयंती वर्ष शुरू हो रहा है। आने वाले 2 वर्षों तक देश सरदार पटेल की 150वीं जन्म जयंती का उत्सव मनाएगा। ये भारत के प्रति उनके असाधारण योगदान के प्रति देशवासियों की कार्यांजलि है। 2 वर्ष का ये उत्सव एक भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत के हमारे संकल्प को मजबूत करेगा। ये अवसर हमें सीख देगा कि असंभव से दिखने वाले काम को भी संभव बनाया जा सकता है।
We're just days away from the US presidential election. November 5th is the D-Day, the night when voting ends and counting begins. The race is between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, a vice president versus a former president. And it's a very close race. I know a lot of you have questions about how American elections work. So we're bringing you a special broadcast. How does the Electoral College work? Why does America always vote on a Tuesday? And why immigration is such a big debate this time? We'll be answering all these questions tonight. So let's get started.